everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk. I'm John, and today we're going to be talking about the new George Miller directed film, 3,000 Years of Longing. But before we dive into that, if you are a fan of film reviews, 4K Blu-ray reviews, tech reviews, game reviews, TV reviews, we try and do them all here on the channel, and nothing helps out more than by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. 3,000 Years of Longing stars Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba in the lead roles. It's directed by George Miller, who is not one of my favorite directors of all time. He's the guy who did all the Mad Max movies, really up to the last one, Mad Max Fury Road, and he's also doing a spin-off called Furiosa that's scheduled to come out in 2024. Now, this movie I was pretty excited about because one thing about George Miller's films that I always loved is how they look. He makes some beautiful looking films. That's the one thing I know everybody took away from Mad Max Fury Road, is that it was one of the best looking and one of the best action movies from probably the last 20 years. Now, for me personally, that film didn't really work from a storytelling level. I was one of those people that said it was just a glorified chase movie, and that's still how I feel. I watched it 3 or 4 times because I want to be with everybody else on that film, and I want to love it, but it just doesn't work for me. And honestly, the entire Mad Max franchise in general doesn't work for me. My favorite of the entire franchise is still the first one, and I think that's because that's the one with the best story. And for George Miller, that's my biggest flaw with a lot of his films, is that I could just never connect to their stories. And to my surprise, I think that is probably the best quality of this film, is the story itself. I was hooked right away in the entire plot. The way this was pitched to me was, if you're a fan of Aladdin, you're going to want to see this movie. That's a very base level way to go into this film thinking, but that did get me in the theater because I didn't see any trailers for this. I just went into it thinking, okay, at the very least, this is going to be a very good looking movie. Maybe I'll like it, and it has some kind of twist on Aladdin. I could definitely be into that. And you know what? That really did work for me. Idris Elba plays a djinn, or a genie. It's pronounced different. It's the same exact theory and the same exact type of kind of character. He's trapped in a bottle, and until the Swinton's character comes along and frees him. And just like in Aladdin, he's got 3 wishes he can grant her, and by her giving these 3 wishes, that'll eventually free him from the trap that he's stuck in. And this has actually happened to him a few times before. He's been freed, but each time he never completes the path. He never gets those 3 wishes granted. It's not like in Aladdin where, even Tilda Swinton is very curious and very, she's like, I've seen all these. I've heard the stories a million times that anyone who has wishes granted.
She knows that all stories about wishing are cautionary tales.
It's never positive. It's always warning you not to do it. Don't do that. And she's very skeptical of the entire thing. And Idris Elba's djinn is explaining to her that, telling her his whole backstory, his whole life story, everything that's happened to him that's led him up to here. And you can just see Tilda Swinton's character loving what she's hearing, and, maybe now she's like, okay, maybe I want to help him out. Maybe that's my purpose in this whole thing, is to help him. And I don't want to spoil too much about the movie, but the story aspect and Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba's characters really do carry this plot along perfectly. I think it's at least, the very least, it's very well cast. It's unbelievably cast. Now the plot, I could see some people saying it's not the greatest of plots, like we've seen this story before, but it really did actually connect to me on an emotional level. It really is actually a very philosophical film, which is something that I eat up, just looking at life in general, because it is epic. This is George Miller himself described this film as epic in scope, and that is very true. Despite a lot of this movie taking place in one hotel room, we do travel back in time because we get flashbacks of what Djinn's life was like and everything that he went through up to this point, which hence the name 3,000 Years of Longing. And really what he's longing for, this can be a light spoiler, I'll just warn you, but what he's really longing for is companionship and love, and he just doesn't want to be lonely, and he has fallen in love before, and he just wants to experience what everyone else experiences. And as he tells her, like, djinns don't sleep, all he has is his own mind and everything, and just reflection, and that's stuff that really does connect to me personally, and I really love that they touched on that in this movie, and that's really what this film is about, is like what Tilda Swinton's character went through, what he went through, what's led them both up to here, even though obviously Djinn has a ton of more of life experience and everything that he's had to go through. It's not like a happy tale like Aladdin. It's nothing like that. It's very adult oriented. It's very much looking at human life and what it is like to live. Very much looking in on yourself and what your purpose is. And I really do think that this film nailed the story part of this entire film. And then obviously it's a George Miller movie. I mean, I saw this at Adobe Theater at AMC and it was gorgeous. I think that that is actually why it's great that it came out at the end of August, because I'm very afraid that this movie is going to get buried because it's an August release. But one benefit is that a film like this that's released by MGM gets to get put into Adobe Theater, where it is like that's usually reserved for some big budget high-end films. But because there's no Marvel movies out right now, or DC, or any other major blockbusters, this gets to be put into Adobe theaters, and that's exactly where you're going to want to see this, because it is gorgeous. Now, that's not a surprise coming from George Miller. He makes some gorgeous looking movies, but one thing that was really impressive was the sound design, because it's in Dolby Atmos, and it really did make great use of all the speakers in the theater. I was listening to it, I'm like, you know, I just appreciate that great sound mixing and the way that this film was shot. It was a beautiful film. I really did enjoy this film. I had pretty low expectations. It really did come down to me either seeing this or The Invitation this weekend, and I decided this at the last minute, and I'm really glad I did, and I can recommend this film highly. If you guys really want to enjoy yourself this weekend, I say try and seek it out in the biggest theater you possibly can. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. I actually think that if you really do get wrapped up in this film, you can actually have a really good emotional connection to this film. It's really not going to be something that you're going to forget about in a day or two. It's a very good film. It's definitely a return to form for George Miller. For me, this might actually be my favorite George Miller film, and I know for a lot of people that might be a little upsetting to hear, but like I said, I'm just not a huge fan of the Mad Max franchise, and this is exactly the kind of George Miller film I was hoping one day to see, and I'm glad I saw it, and I really can recommend this film to all of you. So if I'm going to rate this film out of 10, I'm going to actually give this film an 8 out of 10. It's not the best movie I've ever seen. There's still some flaws. There's some down points in this movie where it feels like they linger on a shot for way too long, because mainly the movie moves along at a pretty brisk pace, actually. It's paced very fast, but there are points where it slows down, and sometimes it slows down to a screeching halt. So I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you. And sometimes the plot, sometimes the script itself can feel a little bit overwritten. Those are just minor issues, but otherwise we're talking about a really good movie that I think you're gonna have a great time seeing. I hope this gets a 4K Blu-ray release, because I would love to see this in my home theater, but you know, I'm not too sure. I really think it's going to depend on the box office, and I'm very afraid that this film is going to get buried at the box office, because just, I don't know if you've seen the reports lately of how business is doing as far as box office returns. I really think if you can go out and see this, I really think it's going to be definitely worth your time and money. So that's it for me, guys, here on another episode of Let's Talk. I really hope you enjoyed this review. Nothing helps out more than by liking this video and subscribing to the channel.